Welcome to this week's How To Tuesday. I have my favorite guest here, Turner Rowland, guide extraordinaire, going to teach us how to call in an elk today. Turner, what do you got for us?
Well, there are a few different ways you can do it, a few different strategies. There are two main strategies, is what I would say, a cow call-based approach and a bugle-based approach. And basically the two basic things about those are a bugle is a kind of fighting call from another male, and a cow call is a breeding call from a female. So you can start out even doing a hybrid approach, doing a kind of a cow call and bugle strategy, which is what I like to do. So say you have a bull bugling down this drainage, which is just the intersection of two ridges at a creek, which is very commonplace for elk to be in and to be doing their thing. So if you have an elk bugle in this drainage, and whether he's with cows or without cows doesn't really matter for this purpose. You want to basically get as close to him as possible before calling. I see a lot of people, even on some hunting videos, kind of bugling their way to the elk, and they're just thinking, well, he's bugling back, like I'm doing the right thing. But what you want to do is you want to get right in his back door, and then you want to either make him mad or make him want to breed. So my favorite way to do it is making him mad, because I just like to make a lot of noise. So if you want to make him mad, you want to bugle a lot, that's great. Get in his back door, throw out a bunch of aggressive bugles. There's really not much point in bugling, just kind of soft, really get at it. You want to get in there within ideally 100 yards in his bubble, bugle at him, and he can either come running to you or just kind of look at you. And he may get a little mad. Another strategy is kind of a closing strategy. It's to take a tree branch and kind of scrape it up and down a tree. Basically doing the same thing as when an elk scrapes his antlers, which is kind of a sign saying, okay, well, let's fight. If you're doing kind of like an estrus mew, basically what cows do on, when they're in estrus, you do want to do the same thing. Just close the distance as fast as possible, and then you want to cow call. Same thing with cow calling. A lot of people make a mistake is just cow calling their way to the elk, but all that's doing is letting the elk know exactly where you are at all times. Play the wind. Usually you can play the wind real well with what are called thermals. So typically the wind is going to be coming down the mountain in the morning and then up the mountain in the afternoon. So if you have a bull above you, in the morning, that's a good thing. And then if you have a bull below you in the morning, typically not a good thing. So you want to either wait or circle around and just play the wind real carefully. I'm not too afraid of making a lot of noise, because if you've ever elk hunted and gotten into elk, they make a lot of noise when they come through the woods. And I've even had elk come to me when I'm walking to them and don't even really know they're there, which can be really exciting. And so when you call an elk in, you know they're coming. So I would say another big thing I see a lot of people doing, kind of making mistakes, is not being ready all the time. So when you start calling, like, it's game on. Like, you want to have an arrow knocked, or if you're hunting in a wilderness area during the rut, pretty deep back there's some, like the Bob Marshall Wilderness Area in Montana allows you to rifle hunt during the rut. So if you're calling even then, have your safety on and a bullet in the chamber. But always be ready. Play the wind. Get right in his back door and either make him mad or make him want to breed, as I would say, are the two biggest things.
All right, so let's talk about get right in his back door. What do you mean exactly?
So, all right, you have a bull bugling in this drainage. You hear him. You know exactly where he is. Even if you really don't know where it is, you can still throw out a couple bugles and try to locate him. But don't, you want to throw out as few bugles as you can when you're not in that bubble. But really, a bull doesn't want to fight, typically. Like, he he can get mad and you can kind of make him want to fight, but he doesn't typically want to fight. Like he wants to breed, and if you get in the way of him breeding, then he's going to want to fight. And so that's how you bugle him in. You kind of have to get in the way of him wanting to breed, and the way you do that is get really close to him and then bugle really aggressively. Like you're the bull that is getting in the way of him breeding. Another like big thing about it is that when you are bugling, he's gonna be looking for you. Like he wants to see you. So in places like the Missouri breaks in Montana, like you're not gonna be able to call really at all, because you're gonna call and he's gonna look at you. He's gonna look for you. He's gonna look for that bull that's making that noise, and he's not gonna see you, and he's gonna run off in the other direction. So make sure if you are calling, the best place to call a bull in is like super thick timber and dark timber, which is great because then you can hear them coming. You can kind of look for them and you can kind of see them, and get ready, because especially if you have your client or your buddy 50 yards in front of you and you're 50 yards behind him calling, they may run your buddy right over. If you bugle them in, they're going to come in stiff-legged, so you also got to be careful about, making moves and doing that. It's a really effective strategy to have your buddy 50 yards in front of you, because you can be scraping a tree and beating up a tree, and he can be looking for that bull, and then, out of the corner of his eye, he sees your buddy draw, and he's just going to kind of look at him. He's going to maybe think it's a cow or a bull. They don't have the best eyesight. Mm-hmm. So you can, with a whitetail or a turkey, it's pretty hard to shoot them standing up. But I mean, as long as you don't move, they can walk right past you, which is pretty cool. But they do have just an absolutely terrific sense of smell. So, just be careful about movement once they're looking at you, though. But I had a client. I called a bull in for him about 34 yards. A really nice wide 6x6, and he drew back and everything perfect, and his head was right behind a tree when he drew back, so everything was perfect. And there are a few things that you can do once he does stop, because he stopped dead when his head was right behind a tree. He was kind of done looking. He was bugling. We were bugling back and forth for 15 minutes probably, and he was just kind of tired of looking. He didn't see anything, and so I started, mewing a little bit with a cow call, and beating up a tree a little bit, and that can kind of be a little bit of a closer. Also, I mean, just I've seen some guys, call bulls in with just like a half bugle, but really aggressively, and then they're just kicking the ground. So, I mean, elk make a lot of noise. So while you're calling, you're trying to imitate an elk, you can make a lot of noise, but make noise that an elk would make. Don't just go walking around. But also don't be afraid to close the gap, because if you don't close the gap, then you're really not going to call an elk in. Like Corey Jacobson can call an elk from 500 yards away probably, but that's probably it. Like he's probably the only one. At least in the area that I'm hunting. So closing the gap is number one thing, just like turkey hunting, just like Graham likes to say, you got to get in their bubble or else they're not interested. Like it's just, they have other turkeys, they have other elk they can go to.
You're only going to pull them so far.
Yeah.
Like it's very effective, but only for so far, and then either they get bored or they're leaving something behind them, and they're only going to walk away so far before they are going to choose to go back.
Right, and especially if you're bugling, they're not going to. I mean, when the only thing on their mind are cows, they're not going to go 300 yards to fight another bull when they can go 100 yards and breed some cows. But another big thing is I see people kind of being like timid to get super close to them because they're making a lot of noise. But I mean, as long as you're kind of, especially if you're another buddy with you, you have 4 legs, so just kind of pace your walking. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to sound like an elk. Like elk are super loud coming through the timber, so just, walk and pace your walk like a four-legged animal would. And I mean, you can walk right up to them within dark timber. You can walk, within 50 yards of them if they don't see you, they just hear you. So you get right there and you just bugle as aggressively you can, and he's probably coming. If you're having a barbecue and some guy, and you have your wife and your family out there, and some guy from across the street starts yelling stuff, at your wife, you're probably just gonna be like, man, that guy's, I'm not even gonna mess with him. It's not worth it. But if some guy comes in and breaks into your backyard and starts yelling stuff at your wife, then you're gonna come and you're gonna beat him up, right? So that's the thing. You gotta go in his backyard, and you gotta talk to him a little bit. Yeah, you gotta take his ribs.
All right. Well, that's some great tips, and I guess we could close it out by which is more satisfying to shoot an elk with a bow or with a gun?
Oh man, for me, with a bow, 100%, because it's during the rut. They're bugling. I mean, you can shoot an elk with a rifle during the rut too, and if you're X amount of miles back from a wilderness area in some places, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah, the bow hunting sounds awesome. All right, great tips. Thank you, Turner.
All right, thank you.